Welcome, Kyle, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Akhlys. Well, a lot of discography, a lot of things. Your upcoming Latin tour in the next couple months. So a lot of things. So in this year's, starting when a question. So in this year's, Akhlys took a lot of importance in the world. So what has happened to the in what was happened with the Nightbringer? Does it have the same importance today as it did you in the 2009?
Nightbringer is it's not my main focus anymore. Akhlys is my main focus. Um, with that said, we are the Nightbringer is not done. Um, I don't know if you'll see us on the live front ever again, but there will definitely be another album. So there's actually there's several members in Nightbringer that all participate in the actual writing of the music, where that isn't the case with Akhlys so much. I write it all minus the drums, which Yogan handles. So with Nightbringer, it takes a little more time in planning and to pull that together. So, but we are planning on at least doing one more studio album.
Nice to hear. So now,
Yeah.
speaking of the Beard of Akhlys, what motivated you to form a band of this nature? Wasn't a single project enough for the first capture your dreams and then their meanings into the music and the concept art, etc. So what does the entity called Akhlys represent to you?
So yeah, that's exactly it. I wanted it to be more specific to my own dream experiences, and that's where it started, and then it kind of expanded from there into other things around that, pulling from esoteric currents and mythologies related to dream and sleeping in trance and gods and demons that are associated with that, and all that entails.
Nice. So, according to the work that you have been developing in the musical aspect, in our opinion, the vocal side is where you stand out clearly. So, do you have any preference considering that you are a multi-instrumentalist within the projects that you participate in? How do you separate the styles or the different ideas of each project that you have?
I usually just I start off with kind of an aesthetic or a mood that's influenced by whatever the context is of the lyrics or the theme of the album. And I usually kind of can imagine, whether it's certain scenes in my head and or in a more general way, and then start to kind of uh hear the sound or imagine what an appropriate sound for that would be. And then there's also just some stylistic differences, of course. It a lot of people that know me and know my music can pick out my style pretty quickly. um, but also within that, for example, Nightbringer tends to be a little more technical, a little more involved, and even pulling it probably a bit more from influences like neoclassical music, where Akhlys is more straightforward than that. It's more focused on the dark atmosphere. So yeah, there's some nuances between there that I always feel I innately understand myself when I approach these things.
Mm. Oh, interesting. So a lot of things. So considering the Dreaming Eye in 2015 as the word that perfectly summarized his message, transmitting what the unconsciousness dictates to us without being unable to control it. So and then Melinoi, it's a great album by the way. It's a clear evolution with a different touch in a musical aspect. It is much more noticeable, intense, melodic, no longer so introspective. So moving away from the density and a bit in the same. So what is the next step in the Akhlys career? Do you have already something prepared?
Yeah, so I have been working on the next album for quite some time actually now. So and it is taking more time. Um and it's kind of at some point it becomes a beast of its own. and it starts more to direct me more so than I direct it. Um, as far as what to expect, that's hard to summarize right now. I think that I still have plenty of work to do on it before I can see that solidify. But I do not think that fans will be disappointed. Fans of either album, I think that you will still find elements from the last two album in there, and then probably some evolution upon that.
Okay, okay. O sea, the line between genres such as dark ambient or industrial is very thin, and as is the leap from the Supplication 2009 to the Dream on I 2015, and later to the Melon Melinoy in 2020. So was easy to switch from style to another at that time. Did you expect any kind of reaction from the public that has been following the band since the early days?
I don't really give that a whole lot of consideration when I begin these things. I kind of just go off of what I feel is correct for me in that time and place. So obviously the biggest leap there was probably between Supplication and Dreaming Eye, with the addition of all the obviously the black metal elements, where the original album was purely dark ambient. But and of course, when Supplication was released, there wasn't a lot of a following for Akhlys yet. Most people didn't know it existed, truthfully, outside of certain circles of dark industrial, dark ambient, and then some that were following me closely in black metal. So that wasn't what that's not something I considered too much at the time. I just kind of did what I felt I wanted to do. And then moving from Dreaming Eye on to Melano, again, it was just I kind of just followed that voice, and kind of let it take a life of its own.
Okay, okay. So now speaking of the artistic aspect that is very prominent in your albums, although you are not the one who produced the artwork or the signs of your records. So how do you handle the getting the result that you expect in each record? So how do you get the satisfaction with a different artist's work that you present in your past albums?
So with the art so far, with so actually Supplication, I actually did create that. So that's a combination of photos that's kind of layered upon each other that I did digitally. And that was so long ago. I did that when I was actually taking college courses. So and so I just kind of felt that relayed this idea, this concept I had in mind. Drawing from a kind of a feminine dreadful aspect, and comparing it to stuff like the Gorgon and the succubus and things like that. So I've always had that kind of that symbolic element within the band. So the first one actually I did create it myself. From there, I didn't want to. I tend to shy away generally from digital art. So it was that's a little more unusual for me. So the next one, it was David Herreras, who I'd worked with before, a friend of mine. He had done some of the Nightbringer stuff, and so I kind of just relayed this same concept, something really similar to that, and he came up with that album cover, which I think he really nailed it with what the essence I was going for, and I felt it really fit the music very well. And then lastly with Melano, it was not a commissioned piece. It was a by Forcus, a piece that had already existed for quite some time that I was really obsessed with, and I always felt that it just fit exactly what I was going for. And I was fortunate enough to when I reached out to him, that it was available for licensing. So, and that he was up to allow us to do that. So that just kind of coincidentally worked out really well. And I think between the three, even though they're different artists, there's obviously a thread that runs between three of them as far as kind of atmosphere and vibe. And I feel that atmosphere really does fit the music very well.
No, yeah, yeah, that is true because the three arts is very different and really enjoy. I really enjoy the three art cover arts. Now, and with this topic now, what is your opinion of the use the artificial intelligence in the making of art? Would you feel satisfied with you purely digital result?
No, no, I wouldn't feel satisfied at all. I mean, when I first saw it, I was more like a morbid fascination, you know. So just because I mean, it's so shocking when you first see it that you've got to see it for yourself, and of course, played around with it. But it's not something that I would find a whole lot of artistic value in, me personally. And I'm sure we're going to start probably seeing these things generated more on album covers. I think that's sad, or truthfully. It's something that I would absolutely never do myself. I think it also kind of betrays artists. But that is the direction in the world we're heading into. And next it'll probably be, you'll probably start hearing albums where the people didn't write the albums. They'll probably have AI that writes the albums.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll just keep going down this until all facets of entertainment, amongst other things, are now dominated by these things that aren't
No,
really,
yeah.
I mean, they're soulless, for lack of a better term. Yeah. So
Mm,
yeah, that's my stance on it. So
okay, okay. Now talking about again from the cover arts, the concept that you use and has a lot of esotericism, many messages here and there. The reference of the Greek culture are innumerable. A lot of things reference of the Greek culture into cover art. So, do you have any musical influence from that scene? And what are the bands that led you down to the darkest path, or the path you have chosen to make music?
as far as specifically Greek stuff, like there's certainly Greek bands that I enjoy. I wouldn't say that they were ever necessarily like at the very top of my list, but especially some of the older Greek scene for sure, Necromantia and those type of bands are, or older Rotting Christ, and those bands were always important to me. I don't think that they weren't so much influential on me as far as my writing style. I think that the biggest influences on my writing style probably came out of Scandinavia, the 90s black metal, especially stuff like Emperor was hugely influential to me. And then stuff similar to that, like Maines or Manez, early Arcturus, a lot of the more, I guess you could say, like atmospheric symphonic stuff. I really appreciated especially the earlier works of Emperor. They tended to be um, some of the darker ones, the more sinister sounding, even though some parts had that majesty to it that you saw more and more of as they continued. But I would say that were probably the most influential bands. And then kind of as I was going to my later teens, early 20s, a few of the American bands kind of slipped in there too that really influenced me, like early Demoncy was huge for me. Joined in Darkness, specifically the album. I thought that was just completely horrific sounding. Some of the early Crimson Moon stuff like that. So
Hmm, okay, okay. Well, regarding of your position and Akhlys project, which has become very important in recent years because Akhlys took a lot of importance in the black metal scene around the world. Can we consider this a band in every sense of the word? I mean, so what motivated you to take this step and take this musical project to do live shows? It is not something, it's something contradictory, a little thing because to have such a personal position in terms of lyrics as now to be a many festivals and shows that often do not have the right people. So you searching a lot of people to do this kind of. How do you handle this situation? What do you have in mind to how do you present Akhlys live?
I think that we've put a lot of time and we into the aesthetic live, especially with the specific masks and those kind of things. And at the same time, we're trying not to be overly theatrical either, because I don't want it to come across as insincere. And so a lot of the garb is pretty much traditional stuff that we wear anyways, like with the just leathers and boots and stuff like that, and keeping it simple with the black paint. And then I guess the most elaborate part would be the masks themselves. As far as something so personal to me, kind of coming out of like this cloistered in my living space, tracking the riffs, moving that from onto a stage. Well, of course there'll be people that maybe it doesn't speak to on the level that I would hope or that it's intended. But of course, people can enjoy music at different levels, and you'll always have your just person that just loves metal, and maybe they don't really give a shit about the message so much, and they just enjoy the riffs, and that's absolutely fine. But we always like to think that out of the crowds of people, that there's going to at least be a handful that are old similar souls like us that it will resonate with, and those are the ones that I'm primarily doing it for, I guess. And that's kind of what gets my blood going, and to see that kind of reciprocation. But at the end of the day, I mean, whatever level the crowd engages with it, just seeing the kind of a furor and energy and madness around it all also is very gratifying in the moment. So
Mm. Okay, nice, nice, nice. So, what happened and all happens in Colorado, especially? I mean, because it's an area where a lot of black metal bands have formed or continue to form and born. So, is there a solid scene there nowadays? And do you consider yourself a part of it?
no, actually, I don't consider myself a part of it at all whatsoever. So yeah, so I couldn't really speak to it so much. I don't really follow a lot of the stuff that comes out of Colorado. Most of it's from Denver, usually around those areas. I don't live anywhere near there. I'm pretty far up in the mountains and kind of secluded, kind of stay to myself. And then I've got my circle of friends here in Colorado. A lot of us tend to be older than some of the ones that are now doing the stuff in Denver and stuff like that. So most of them I probably don't even actually know. I also don't even tend to go out to shows or anything like that. So I see shows when I go out on the road, and unless it's something very that I'm very excited, or something very specific, then I won't typically make the journey out of the mountains up to Denver to go see. So no, I'm not very engaged with the scene. I used to be when I was in my 20s, but that's we're talking 20 years ago. So the rare occasions I do make it up to the Denver scene, I don't typically know anybody up there. So yeah.
Mhm. I remember when I read an interview with you, that you had bad shows and good. Well, you had bad shows and good shows. And do you prefer to play it in Europe, especially? So, what was your best live experience, and what made you so special that time? What about the live performance? I mean, well, in general, in this aspect.
Well, I would say that probably the most special and the most unique were the Gathering of Shadows festivals that were put on here by a friend of mine in Colorado. And those were all Nightbringer, but so that was all in the forest. So it's a unique setting, and it was very underground and very DIY, especially back in the day when we were doing those. And so those were probably the most unique and just close to my heart. And outside of that, though, man, it's really hard to say. There's been so many great shows, especially I mean, Akhlys hasn't been playing live that long, but we've managed to get quite a few shows under our belt in just the last year alone. Yeah, gosh, it's a lot of it starts to almost run together in my head sometimes. But Cosmic Void was pretty incredible. That one really stood out for me. Maybe that was also because it was the very last show on our tour, which was an amazing tour, with Chaos Invocation and Fides and Versa, which we all became close friends during that. So it was just kind of one of these magical tours where things just kind of clicked, and that final show, uh, they did a hell of a job with that, and it was just great bands and just a really cool setting. It was my first time in London, and the energy there in the crowd was just absolutely amazing. They were just it was ferocious. So yeah, that's one that stands out for sure.
Mhm. Okay, well, and talking about this aspect, so well, we unrelated with the art the art that you present live. So, what do you want to capture with your creative art to a fan who attends to your shows?
Well, I would hope that it would kind of come across as something otherworldly, at least have an element of that, and have of course, the element of kind of dread and panic and terror and all the things that really inform Akhlys, and so we try and relay that through the music itself, and so we wanted to have that level of not only atmosphere and mystery, but also a viciousness to it, an aggressiveness to it that kind of blends with all of that.
Okay, okay, okay. So, to this aspect, could you explain the symbology behind the ritual mask that you use in the Akhlys ritual special life? And especially this kind of mask changes in every record, perhaps, or in every song, or on according to what you perhaps is your mood, perhaps is your feeling. So perhaps is where you are, depends.
Yeah, so at its core, the symbolism behind the mass, we're drawing from esotericism here, and probably more specifically something that might be considered like European witchcraft, but you can find it in many other cultures. So it's something that at once conceals kind of your mundane aspect, your regular aspect, while at the same time revealing kind of a demonic, or representing a demonic other self or inner self or shadow self, or however you want to put it. So that was the general idea. Now, in trying to relay that, I thought it was important to keep it, again, not too elaborate, something that most people could relate to just by glancing at it. So you've got the predominantly black faces with the kind of demonic hooked noses, and the pointed chin, and the sharpened teeth, like you can see, and all across European, um, European images of demons, and then of course not just Europe, into the East. You see the similar things, these archetypal icons that when someone glances at it, they could say, yeah, that's an evil entity, that's a demon. So I wanted to keep it simple in that regard, so that when people do see that, it's pretty simple, and immediate recognition. So.
No. Okay, okay. So now talking about your upcoming dates here in Latin America, in Mexico and Colombia. So what kind of expectations do you have for this, your first Latin tour here?
Yeah. I have no fucking idea, truthfully. So I've only played a few times in Mexico, and it was very, very long ago with my old death metal band Excommunion, early 2000s, and that was just on the border, but even just those few experiences, I was very impressed by how hospitable everyone was, and just the level of energy, and how diehard everyone seems to be, in Mexico and in South America about metal, and especially black metal. So we're hoping that we see that diehard, maniacal energy within the crowd, and so we're really looking forward to it.
Mhm. And what kind of bands do you know from Colombia and Mexico? Because you will be playing that in both countries.
Yeah, nothing really. So it's all gonna be a big surprise for us. So I
Okay.
think, yeah, I think we'll find out once we get there. So.
Okay, okay. So we are very close to this interview, Kyle. And for this aspect, one of the questions as well, that now the great, I think, like the cliche wave that exists in the world is that there are now a lot of writers are creating books about the scenes, about the Greek scene, about Norway, about the black metal in general. And I think years ago, there's exists a book from the black metal scene from US, where Nightbringer was mentioned in that book, etc. So, what kind of opinion do you have from this kind of book that are trying to say that the U.S. black metal has a personal sound compared to the Norwegian, Finland, Swedish, and the Greek scene?
That's hard to say. And again, because when I was younger, besides a very few specific bands, I didn't really follow a whole lot of the American stuff. So like I had mentioned, Demon Seed was one that I really enjoyed, and then of course stuff like Judas Iscariot was another, early Zaster was another, Crimson Moon. outside of that, I didn't follow a whole lot of what was going on in America, in the American black metal scene, and that was nothing against, specifically against the American black metal scene. I think that also at the time in Colorado, there wasn't really any other black metal going on, so it was kind of just my circle of friends. So we didn't seem to be, since we weren't a part of, like, you know, a scene like they might have out in LA or Seattle or Texas, where they have all these different bands with all these different people. We never really experienced that. And so I think that, you know, and that might have even been a good thing, because we just kind of, you know, did our own thing and developed in our own way. So it's hard for me to say, like, you know, I would assume that any country has at least some defining factors that you can find from band to band, or some similarities, at least with some of the bands, where you could say, oh, that sounds very Greek, or that sounds very Swedish, or that sounds very Norwegian. I'm not sure exactly what that would be for America. And again, you know, and I think a lot of the stuff that came out of America too, so at least the stuff that I found more interesting, isn't even necessarily fully black metal per se. Maybe it's considered more like black death or war metal, you know, is some of my more favorite stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't, that one's hard to say. And I know the book that you're speaking of, but I don't believe I actually got a chance to ever read it. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the few last questions, as perhaps you know, that in February, Satanic War Master has a little troubles to play in Mexico City, because they, no, according to the government and according to the many people, they spread the hate, Satanism, or Nazism. Well, I don't agree about that, because I spoke with Lori. Lori is my friend, so Lori that doesn't believe in that kind of things. They just a person that believe in Satanism. This is a different person. But is the curious thing is that always the black metal are related with these kind of aspects, Satanism, I know, Nazism, etc., etc. So perhaps, what is your opinion about the prohibition, especially with the music, with into the black metal?
yeah, I don't know. You know, of course, the day and age that we have moved into, where there's so much political sensitivity, especially coming from the left, and then the cancel culture stuff. It you know, it's interesting to see this proliferate into black metal music, where it was never really an issue, or seen as a really a big deal. I mean, you even have, you know, members of Emperor in their bands like on B, which that would not go over well today. I could tell you that. And so I don't know. I think that you know, for me, I never found politics so interesting that I'd incorporate them into my black metal music, and therefore I never have, or even cultural matters. For me, it's always been something that's more spiritual and removed from those kind of things. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that black metal should always have a freedom of expression. It's always going to be rogue. It's always going to be, at least to certain parties, offensive. And I almost feel like if we were to sterilize it too much, then it just wouldn't be black metal anymore. You know, if we're going to worry about all the offenses of one group, then we have to worry about the offenses of all groups, and then what does it mean at that point? And, you know, so it's backwards time. I feel their pain. I feel Laurie's pain. I do know him as well. I can only imagine how difficult it is for them to try and pull off shows at this stage. So
No, the show is still going, even under the
good.
government eye. So so it's full of crap. I saw a lot in the social media. The comments is full of crap, that kind of comments.
Yeah.
Really full of crap. So, well,
Yeah.
well, if you want to say something more, just say it.
And no, just absolutely looking forward to this tour. I think it's going to be quite the experience, and you know, for most of us, it'll be not my first time in Mexico, but my first time that far down south, and then my first time in Colombia. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. And with this aspect, do you have time to hear the band that supported you in Colombia? It's a band from Peru. is Arcada.
Yeah, so I've been hearing some good things about it. I haven't checked it out yet, but I plan to, and I really look forward, and we'll plan to watch their set and all that. And so it looks like it might be something that I'd be very, very interested in.
Okay. Well, Kyle, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one. Like me, you're a terrific guy. This is the second time we spoke because the first time we spoke just by reading interview, well, no, or written interview a few weeks, well, 3 weeks, 3 years ago. So for the last album. So now it's an experience to talk face to face with you. It's a huge pleasure to talk. So I will try to fly to Colombia to see you if my work let me. So perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metalero followers.
Yeah, just fucking looking forward to getting out there and seeing and experiencing your guys' world and seeing the black metal through your eyes and and that whole experience.
Great.